Whenever my wife and I talk about an old curmudgeon relative of ours, or we see an actor portraying some grumpy old geezer in a movie, my wife will often remark, "I don't ever want to get old." But what does old really mean? Well, it can't mean age alone, because we all know a few grumpy curmudgeons who might very well be as young as 30 or 40. Nor does being old automatically mean deteriorating health, because there are many people in their 70s or even 80s who can run circles around people who are 20, 30, or even 40 years younger. So the word old is actually difficult to define unless we want to set an arbitrary number, like, well, let's say anyone over age 65 is old. Although I think my wife would quickly change her tune about never wanting to live long enough to get old if that was the exit number. So as you can see, saying that someone is old is as vague as saying someone is honest, because, well, unless we clearly agree on our mutual definition of honesty or old, well, our discussion is ultimately meaningless. But that's what we often do. You and I can have a discussion about someone being old, and we might think we're in complete agreement without ever realizing that our definition of old probably varies quite radically. And this was so wonderfully illustrated a few months back when my wife and I called my mom. Now, to set this story up, my mom is 91 years old. She lives alone with her little dog Teddy. She drives a car and she's completely independent. So as we were chatting over the phone and catching up on the latest gossip, Mom mentioned that my Aunt Ruth was debating whether or not she should have eye surgery because she was beginning to lose sight in one eye. And then she added that Aunt Ruth was a little hesitant to have the surgery because the convalescence was incredibly demanding. Now, apparently, this type of retinal surgery required her to lie face down for 24 hours a day for quite a number of weeks. Because I guess an implanted gas bubble in her retina has to rise in order to reattach itself. And so keeping her head in a face-down position is apparently the only way that this particular surgery works, and it's the only way it will heal. So when I asked about the possibility of Aunt Ruth losing sight in both eyes, Mom was quite certain that that was not a concern. So I casually mentioned that it seemed to me to be quite an ordeal to go through at her age when she was only faced with the probability of gradually losing sight in just one eye. Well, my mom was rather shocked that I could even think such a thing. Because after all, she said, "Well, your Aunt Ruth is still quite young." Well, that struck me as a little odd, so I asked, somewhat confused, "Mom, how old is Aunt Ruth?" "Oh," Mom replied, "she just barely turned 86. Well, my wife and I had a good laugh over that. But you know, later on, I kept thinking about what she said, because clearly, from Mom's perspective, why would Aunt Ruth not do everything possible to look after her health, especially when she's just an 86-year-old spring chicken with so many years ahead of her? And so after that conversation, I began giving the idea of old a great deal of thought. And consequently, I came up with my own definition of old. And my definition is simply this: someone is old as soon as they think of themselves as old. Because when that happens, they begin to accept a downward slide into decrepitude, disability, and dependence on others as a natural part of aging. And here's the thing, it's not at all uncommon to hear people in their 40s and 50s moan about getting old and drone on about how they can no longer do all the things they used to be able to do in their younger years. And the thing is, whenever I hear someone say that, I know they're already old, regardless of their chronological age, because our beliefs have an uncanny way of becoming our reality. But the fact is, you can absolutely live a long life without ever becoming old. Because barring some autoimmune disease or some freak accident, you have an unbelievable degree of control in how you age. Poor health, endless medications, and dependency on others is becoming increasingly common, but it's not natural. When you learn to master health and vitality, you won't ever think of yourself as old, nor will you accept the idea of having to be dependent on others, because you won't have to. Like Mom said, at 86 years of age, you're still young. And on that score, me and Mom are in complete agreement. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.